This week's Yoga Talk show is brought to you by Four Sigmatic. Four Sigmatic is a nutritional supplement company that specializes in medicinal mushrooms, and they make these really cool packets that you can make into basically mushroom coffee or mushroom tea. It's meant to replace your morning coffee or your morning tea, and the ones I particularly like are cordyceps and lion's mane. We had the founder of Four Sigmatic on the show a couple of years ago, you might remember. Really great company. They use fruiting bodies, not just mycelium. They use non-chemical extractions, so you get lots of beta-glucans, lots of terpenoids, and you get all the healing properties of mushrooms without all the gas and bloating that you often get with mushroom products that you'll find in the pharmacy or in your nutritional store locally. As a sponsor of the show, they've offered listeners a 15% discount. Go to foursigmatic.com/yogabody. That's foursigmatic, all spelled out, foursigmatic.com/yogabody. And use coupon code YOGABODY when you check out, and you'll save 15%. Again, the ones I like are cordyceps and lion's mane, but you'll find a whole bunch of other cool products you might want to check out as well. Thanks to Four Sigmatic for supporting the show. Of all the health challenges that I've had in my life, the biggest one I've had is my sleep. I've been a terrible sleeper for as long as I can remember. I spent most of my 20s and much of my 30s sleeping 5-ish hours a night, sometimes 4 hours a night. A huge night for me would be 6 or 7 hours a night. In my 30s, I got a little bit better. I was sleeping maybe 5 to 6 hours a night. And I hit 40 this year, and I'm doing better than I've ever done before. It's not so much about quantity, although for me the quantity was certainly an issue because I was so sleep deprived, but more than that, it's about quality. And now I consistently get 6, 7, once in a while even 8 hours of sleep. Generally, I need somewhere between 6 and 8 hours of sleep myself to feel balanced. Everyone's very different, and everyone is different at different stages of life. A teenager might need 10 hours of sleep. Somebody who's 73 might need 5 hours of sleep. That's all okay. What's not okay is when you're walking around so sleep deprived, like I have been much of my life, that you fall asleep in a barber's chair, that, the moment you get on an airplane, you fall asleep and have to be woken up after the plane lands. This is a level of sleep deprivation that I would never wish upon anyone. And a lot of the past guests we've had on the show have done a really great job of helping us to talk about the top grading aspects of sleep hygiene. So the little micro changes that you can make in terms of food, in terms of light, noise, sound, pre-bed rituals, all these things which are really pleasant and really helpful for improving your sleep. But they're the tip of the iceberg. They're not what's hiding under the water. And what's hiding under the water are really basic fundamental things like recognizing circadian rhythms, recognizing the importance of a morning waking routine, recognizing the importance of light and how it impacts melatonin and other rhythms and hormones in your body. On this week's show, I'm really excited to share with you a different viewpoint about sleep and about how to improve your sleep. What I found really, really refreshing and simple was to not get so obsessed with getting all the sleep hygiene right, because inevitably there are times when you can't control everything, but instead getting really obsessed about the global, macro, big picture stuff that we can take control over every single day. As always, your questions, your comments, and feedback are most welcome. Email me, podcast@yogabody.com. So hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to the Lucas Rockwood Show. Today's show is called How to Achieve Deep, Restful Sleep, and I am joined here with my guest, Stephanie Romiszewski. So Stephanie has a degree in psychology and behavioral sleep medicine. Her interest began while studying chronobiology, which I'm excited to learn more about, during which time she worked and assisted sleep research at Harvard Medical School. Stephanie's worked with the NHS in the UK, clinical sleep disorder centers, diagnosing and treating all sorts of things, some of which we've certainly chatted about on the show, things like sleep apnea, narcolepsy, parasomnias, insomnia, movement disorders, circadian rhythm disorders, and more. You can learn more while we're chatting at her site, which is sleepyheadclinic.co.uk. Again, that's .co.uk. Sleepyhead Clinic. We'll link up in the show notes as well. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Chronobiology. I know some people are thinking, I've heard about these chronotypes recently. There's been some books out and things like that. Can we dip into that just before we start talking about other sleep-related issues?
Sure. So I'm not an expert in chronobiology, but I did start my sort of like sleep investigation or explanation there. Essentially, it is, for me, it was the we did a lot of research in the sleep-wake cycle. So we looked a lot at circadian rhythms, which is like it's all of your natural about 24-hour cycle rhythms, which includes your sleep-wake cycle, it includes your temperature, it includes your hunger levels. And so we looked a lot at that circadian rhythm cycle, and that's all under the sort of the area of chronobiology.
There's been a lot of popular talk lately about people having a chronotype, like you're a morning person or an evening person.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I just kind of roll my eyes at that because I don't know. I've been a morning person my whole life, and then I had kids and I messed up my schedule, and now I seem to work until like 2 a.m, and I sort of get up later. I used to always practice yoga at 4 or 5 in the morning. I don't know. What is it with? You've done a lot more research into this than me. What are your thoughts? Are these real biological things? Are they moving target, or what do you think?
So yes, definitely they are real, but I think we put a bit too much emphasis on them, and you've just proven my point, which is that you can essentially change your own chronotype. And we know in research, when we put people in labs and we try to shift their sleep-wake pattern, we can literally do it on any time we want. It can be harder depending on how far that is away from their natural sleep cycle, but we can do it. And in real life, just like you said, maybe when you have kids or a particular schedule, or you're doing night shifts, you can shift it yourself. But most people will revert back to something kind of natural if given the opportunity. But our lives are changing all the time. So of course, it shifts with us. We don't realize how much our behavior affects our bodily functions. We always assume it's a mystery, that they're doing something strange to us, when in actual fact, our brains are like small puppies and they're always learning. And so every time you change your behavior, it recognizes the pattern and it changes it, even if it's a bad one.
I've heard different theories also about rhythms, that maybe some people are not on a 24-hour clock and that's why they struggle with sleep. There's all kinds of theories. Miserable sleepers like myself, we come up with all these different ways to try to figure out how to sleep better. What are your thoughts on this concept that maybe people are wired for a 22-hour day or a 26-hour day, and this attempting to force ourselves into this rhythm doesn't work?
Yeah, we definitely all have like a different circadian phase, which is essentially what you're saying, like a different type of rhythm. Maybe it's slightly more or slightly less than 24 hours. But I think actually venturing down that kind of rabbit hole is not helpful if you're looking to resolve your sleep problems. Most of the time, it's just that we're not educated in the right way to resolve our sleep problems. So I'm sure you've heard it. You go online and someone says 10 quick tips to help you sleep better. And there'll be things like, don't drink any caffeine and have a warm bath before you go to bed and do this and do that. And actually, anyone who's dictating that much to you, it's not going to work. Yes, okay, individually, all those tips may help you if you're obsessed with, for example, caffeine. Yes, if we get you off caffeine, then yeah, perhaps it's going to change something to do with the quality of your sleep. But have you ever noticed how a good sleeper does no good things for their sleep? Have you ever noticed that? Like they're not worried about how much caffeine they have. They're having their espressos after a dinner party. They're drinking too late and they're still sleeping well. So how can those particular rules be resolving, say, insomnia or severe sleep problems? They can't.
I'm a terrible sleeper. I have been as long as I can remember. I've been getting better, actually. I've been putting a lot of effort into it. The past year has maybe been one of the best sleep years of my life.
Good.
But I put a lot of thought into it. So I tried all the tricks, the hot shower, the cold shower, the squishy bed, the not squishy bed. And it's kind of like you said, a lot of it, I always like to look at parallels in other things, and I do a lot of work with food and nutrition. And I think of with food and nutrition, same thing. People want to get healthy, so they go out and they buy some acai berries or some goji berries, and those are good. Those are good, but those aren't going to fix the fact that, you had 25 pints last week. It's just not going to fix that, And so, you can get the bed right and the temperature right and take the shower and all that stuff. But if your head is filled with crazy levels of cortisone and you've got stress hormones and all kinds of crazy stuff, it's probably just the tip of the iceberg. So it's probably not going to make a big difference. So maybe people are on a different clock. Maybe they're a morning person. Maybe they're a night person. I think your comment is really telling. I think, so what? If you feel like an alien and you're living on planet Earth, you're still on planet Earth, so you have to deal with it. So if you think you have a 22-hour clock, what are you going to do with that when the world is on a 24-hour clock? So if these top 10 lists are not so useful, if these sort of micro changes to sleeping patterns are not so useful, clearly people have massive problems, and they tend to throw prescription drugs, or even more common, just half a bottle of red wine is the typical problem, the typical solution that people throw at it. So what are some more realistic ways, some holistic ways people can start to think about their sleep?
So just picking up on a few things you said there, you said it all when you said, I've done all the tricks. And actually, you can't fix sleep with tricks, just like you can't fix your diet with tricks. And what we need to understand here is that sleep is a habitual problem. If you've got a poor sleep problem, you've had it for longer than 3 months, it's become a habitual problem. It's kind of like, weirdly, it's kind of like an addiction. Your brain thinks that nothing's wrong, that this is normal. It's gone into a bit of a survival mode, and it's still allowing you to function, even though it makes you feel awful. And so therefore you have to treat it like a habitual problem, and you need to make some consistent changes, and you need to make very specific ones that have a real evidence base behind them. So for example, one of the things that people are told when they can't sleep is make sure you go to bed at the same time every day. And it makes me laugh, because I think to myself, how are you going to dictate when you want to go to bed? Like, you can't just say to your body, right, we're going to go to bed at 10 and expect it to just magically go to sleep. So what people are doing is they take themselves to bed at a specific time, and then of course they're lying in bed awake, stressing and having more anxiety, because they've been told that this should work. If they're consistently going to bed at the same time, why aren't they sleeping? But of course, if you understand anything about sleep, you understand that it's a drive state like hunger, very similar to eating, and that the more wake time you have, the more sleep you will need, and the more you build up your sleep drive. And most people are so terrified of feeling sleepy because the media is busy telling us about how sleep deprivation is really bad for us, that we've started to think that we're all sleep deprived when we're not, actually. Yes, we've got a problem with the timing of our sleep and the quality of our sleep, but what we do to try and fix it is we try to lie in, or we go to bed early, or it's quite rare to have an insomniac nap, but they might try to nap, or they might try to rest more. But actually, all those compensations are what's making it worse. And what you really need to be doing is building up a sleep drive. So my first rule, and I'm sorry because that was a really long explanation, is do not go to bed when you're not sleepy. So give yourself permission, for the first few days at least of this new protocol, give yourself permission to stay up later and build up a strong sleep drive. Stop worrying about the quantity of sleep. You need to get that out of your head. I know that the media's gone wild with trying to tell you how many hours of sleep you need. Well, the real answer is nobody knows. Everybody is different. So my first rule would be go to bed later. And my second rule would be, sort of carrying on from that, is you do need to get up at the same time every day. So that is something that really is going to affect you, but you don't need to go to bed at the same time every day. Let your body dictate when it's sleepy, not tired, not fatigued, literally nodding off in the chair, and then try to get up at exactly the same time every day, which is probably going to be dictated by your work schedule, but you need to try and stick to it at the weekends as well. Now, just those two rules alone, if you're not napping or compensating at any other point during the day, you're not lying in, you're not going to bed early, you're doing those two rules alone, you will see a difference. But it will be really hard to start with, because you might be going to bed at 3 a.m. and having to get up at 6 a.m. But imagine what happens if you consistently build up that sleep drive. So you're not constantly changing the rules, you're just consistently telling your body, I don't care what you do, I don't care if you don't want to sleep, you're not allowed to sleep any other time, and this is your only opportunity. Eventually, your body will start to go back to what it knows, and that is to sleep consistently at a particular time.
I've never heard that term, sleep drive, before, but I really like the concept. We're always talking about on this show how it's important to feel hunger, to feel discomfort, to feel out of breath, to feel, we live in such a comfortable world that we really lose touch with our bodies. And it feels great to be exhausted and fall asleep. It feels great to, just be completely parched and drink water, and everything's so perfect. We go 3 hours between meals, and, temperature control. You have this 4-degree window that your house is in, and I think it's really, really important to just be a little bit uncomfortable on a pretty regular basis, and that includes sleep. I wanted to touch back on the addiction to sleep deprivation, because I've also experienced this. As I mentioned, I've struggled with sleep as long as I can remember. I remember being 10 years old and laying up in bed and reading and sneaking things to get as little sleep as I could. For some reason, I don't know if it was the elevated cortisol levels. I don't know if that gave me this sort of wired but tired, sort of dopey feeling during the day, if somehow that was pleasurable. I don't know what it was, but I don't know if it gave me an excuse to sort of half-assed things. I can't really figure it all out, but I think there's definitely something to that because I don't know. I relate it to being super sober or being super well rested. You don't have an excuse for yourself, you know, whether you're in a business meeting or a personal relationship or whatever it is. You have nothing really to blame it on. If you're sober and you're rested and it's, 7:00 at night and you're looking at somebody in the eyes, whether it's a colleague or a loved one or whatever it is, you don't really have an excuse. You kind of have to show up. And I think that sort of dopey, overworked, wired but tired, frazzled, bags under the eyes is somehow glamorized, and I think it's also kind of a cop-out.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think we blame sleep for too much. So which makes me laugh because actually, like I said before, our behavior actually dictates our sleep way more than we believe. But we're so busy trying to, and you kind of said it there, we do love to look into the intricacies of our body and try to figure out what chemicals are causing what, when actually it's much more simple than that. Of course, all these processes are going on, but actually it's much more behavioral. You can fix your sleep by changing your behavior, but we're so obsessed with thinking it's this random, I don't know, chemical or imbalance or something in our bodies that we can't control, because that is the easier option, isn't it? To not have to take responsibility for your own sleep problem. But actually we really, really need to. In fact, health as a whole, we definitely need to start feeling empowered to take control ourselves, because that lack of control is not nice. So we might feel like it's all right to blame things, but actually we hate feeling out of control at the same time. If you don't want to feel out of control, then you need to take responsibility and start to realize. I mean, just explaining your 10-year-old self is really interesting. Why are we so geared up in this world to spend time in the evening, sort of getting wired? And what the ironic thing is the other side of it is, why do we wake up in the morning and try to get ready in the dark? We need light, for example, and we need energy, and we need to feel focused in the morning. So why aren't we busy on our social medias first thing in the morning and doing all this stuff first thing in the morning, like getting the lights on, putting the music on, getting the house up, getting everybody up early in the morning? No, we don't want to do that. But we're happy to try and push into our sleep time in the evening. And we physiologically can change what our bodies want to do. 9:00 at night, your melatonin is supposed to be increasing. That's your sleepy hormone. It's not that you should be sleeping at 9, but physiologically, your body is doing all the little tools and things that it needs to do to try to make you sleepy so that you can go to bed. That's when all that processes start happening. And what do? We have light exposure, we have technology, we have overstimulation. And what our brains do is they're so smart, they sort of say, oh, okay, so what he's doing right now is he's doing the same things as he did in the middle of the day. And in the middle of the day, he wanted to be alert, he wanted to problem solve, he wanted to be really high functioning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce his melatonin for him and increase his cortisol or any other chemicals that I can to try and make him what he clearly wants to be, which is wired and alert. And then at the end of it all, we're like, why can't I sleep? And it's hilarious because it's actually our behavior that's dictating to our bodies how to do things.
It makes a lot of sense. At the same time, when I looked at myself, when I started really getting serious about trying to fix my sleep, and it really took a long time, and I'm definitely not there yet, but I had to be honest, just looking at, okay, am I doing the basics, right? Is my system really clear of alcohol and caffeine? Is my blood sugar all jacked up? These kind of basic things, I think, are pretty hard truths that, most people are putting their head down on their pillow, or at least half people, with elevated blood alcohol levels, elevated blood glucose levels, caffeine in their system. And while, as you've mentioned, there's plenty of people who go out and party all the time and nothing, they can still sleep perfectly. I think if you're dealing with a challenging situation, it kind of makes sense to dot the I's and cross the T's. What's your take on that?
Well, okay, I totally agree with you to an extent, but the problem is what I'm seeing in clinic when insomniac is really bad, these are people that have had it for 20, 30 years, is that they are obsessed with all those things. So they are already doing all the right things. So at least
it's
half
like
of the people, they that are listening to your show right now will have already done all those things. Or we call them sleep hygiene, how to get a good night's sleep, that list of rules that people get. And they're doing all of them religiously. And actually they're getting anxious because one, not only are they not working, but two, it's completely impossible to stick to them all the time. We're only human. You should be allowed about 30% of the time to kind of drift off course and still be okay. And that's so true. And so what happens is, even though they know these things aren't working, they then get even more anxious if they do go out, or if they do something, or they just stop having fun altogether and cancelling everything. And like I said, our behaviour tends to dictate what happens. If you're not having good quality wait time, i.e. you're not socializing, you're not using your brain properly, you're not exercising, you're not doing those things that you really need to do because you're busy trying to cope with a situation, and you're doing all the things that you think you should do, then you actually increase your anxiety and stress levels. So I do agree with you to a point, but if you're listening out there and you are doing what you thought was all the right things and you're really anxious and stressed, then what I would say is just let it go. Like I really would. And I would do those two things. Don't go to bed until you're really sleepy, and get up at the same time every day. And there's a few other tips that I can add if you like, and do those ones instead. And then just enjoy yourself the rest of your time. So yes, I would say give yourself permission to go to bed later. Get up at the same time every day. Get as much light as you possibly can in the morning. Get as much light. Light is your best friend. You need light. Most people are not getting enough light. It could be artificial. It doesn't matter, but get as much light and movement as you can in the morning, and be consistent with this. So try to do the same things every morning. And then go to bed when you're really, really sleepy. Don't nap during the day. And most insomniacs will be listening to this and they'll say, well, I don't do that anyway. Yes, but if you're following the rules properly, you should start to feel significantly sleepy. And if you are awake in the middle of the night, so say, and that is only happening still because of habit and pattern. So these rules aren't going to work straight away. You need to be consistent for your body to trust what you're doing. You need to get out of the bedroom and you need to go and enjoy yourself. Don't do something boring or mundane or something that someone has dictated to you is relaxing. Relaxation has become such a hot topic at the moment that I actually think people are getting anxious because they're doing all these things that they think they should be doing and they're not working for them specifically. So I would argue that you just need good quality wait time. Leave your bedroom. Go and enjoy yourself. Do something that you really love. It's not going to wake you up. That's not how sleep works. Unless you go and run a marathon, you're not going to wake yourself up. If you're already quite awake, it means your drive is not strong enough and you need to follow these rules for a little bit longer to build up that sleep drive. But the more you start looking for all these little things, like how can I get back to sleep right now, but you're not logically thinking, hang on a minute, if I can't sleep right now, this might be a habit, but it also could be because I just don't have a strong enough sleep drive. I need to follow the basic rules in order to gain that sleep drive back, and I'm less likely to have this in the future. But we are obsessed with trying to find the short-term fixes, the things that will fix us right then and there in the middle of the night. And yes, some of those fixes, they might work for the person who has the odd night's sleep, but if you've had your problem for longer than 3 months, I can guarantee you any quick tip that anyone gives you will not work. You need to do something consistently. Just like with diet and exercise, you can have a really restrictive diet and lose a lot of weight in a week, but you will not be able to maintain it. It's exactly the same with sleep. You've got to do something consistently over a few weeks.
Let's take a quick break from our show to thank this week's sponsor, Four Sigmatic. Four Sigmatic makes the highest quality medicinal mushroom beverages on the market. Instead of nutritional supplements like capsules or pills, they make these really cool sachets that you put into a glass of hot water. Yoga Body listeners get 15% off. Go to foursigmatic.com. That's all spelled out, foursigmatic.com/Yoga Body. And when you check out, use code YOGABODY as a coupon code and you'll save 15% on your order.
You can have a really restrictive diet and lose a lot of weight in a week, but you will not be able to maintain it. It's exactly the same with sleep. You've got to do something consistently over a few weeks. So get up at the same time every day. Don't go to bed till you're really sleepy. Get up in the middle of the night if you need to and go and enjoy yourself. There is no point lying in bed stressing about it. You are not going to just magically go off to sleep. Go and enjoy yourself and distract yourself, and you're more likely to feel sleepy on your own accord, and then go back to bed when you're feeling better, and get plenty of light in the morning and the first half of the day. Doesn't matter what kind of light it is. Those would be my real top tips. And if you really did them properly, I can guarantee that you would see a sort of an increase in your sleep quality to start with, and then an increase in your duration when your body starts to feel sleepy and it allows you to go to bed earlier.
Really great. I love the focus just on the holistic approach. I for sure have been guilty of just trying to tweak little things, and it hasn't really made a big difference. And interestingly, just intuitively and just out of frustration, I've done a lot of just accepting as well too. And I wanted to talk about jet lag, because I've been traveling back and forth from Europe to Southeast Asia for 10 years, 4 times a year. So big changes, 12 hours difference, 9 hours difference, this kind of thing. And everybody always has these tips on how to overcome jet lag, as if it's like getting over the flu. I was like, it's like the weirdest thing to me that people treat it like it's a disorder, how to get over jet lag.
Yeah.
I was just on a different time zone, and now I flew to a new, my body's tired. I think it's totally normal. I don't need like medication or like hypnotherapy or anything like that.
Absolutely.
And I guess, I really struggle with the jet lag thing because I would fly and teach. So I'd often be presenting for 8 hours a day on 2 hours of sleep. I've even had lectures where literally my sleep problem is so bad. I've been talking and falling asleep while in front of a group of 30 people. I've gotten my hair cut. I've fallen asleep in dozens of haircuts. I mean, I'm that kind of sleep deprived person. But I want to talk about jet lag because I get questions all the time. Do you have a cure? The word people always use, do you have a cure for jet lag? And it's just such a bizarre term, such a bizarre phrase. And people are freaking out. They can't even fly from, in my country, they'll go from LA to New York, and they're freaked out about a 3-hour difference. I was like, what kind of fragile creatures are we? We can't handle a 3-hour difference,
So true. I mean, the first thing I would say is, the two main things in research, if you really want to look at the evidence base here, then you're looking at light. So you need to get as much light as you can on your new time zone. So if you can, if it's supposed to be morning, you need to stick to it being morning, but get as much light as you can. Light is the one most influential factor on your sleep-wake cycle. So if you want to shift your sleep-wake cycle, you just need to expose yourself to light at the right times. So you need to be on that new schedule. So if it's supposed to be morning somewhere, you need to make it bright. But it's quite funny, isn't it? Because on aeroplanes, they put the lights out and things like that at interesting times. But I need you to have light when you think it's your new time zone, if you want to prepare for it. And then when you're in your new time zone, get as much light at the right times of day as possible, and then make it darker when you can. And the second thing that is very evidence-based is the eating. So actually, when you eat on your new time zone, should quickly, especially if you're having lots of light at the right times of day, it should help you to adjust as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, there's no quick fix. It's the same thing. You are going to feel rubbish for a while. But as long as you're starting to be consistent with your eating and your light exposure, you will shift as quickly as your body physically can. The thing is, it's not good for our bodies to be able to shift super quickly. Your body needs to adjust. It's doing all the right things for you. It's adjusting itself to your new time zone. So, I know that sometimes it can feel inefficient, but actually your body is working really well. But you also just mentioned something else that's really important. We all freak out over sleep far too much. And you've just said to me, I know sometimes it's got so bad. Yeah, I mean, falling asleep in front of people, that's not good. But you have probably had more times than not where you feel you've had a terrible night's sleep, but you have still managed to function and do what you needed to do the next day. I'm not talking about the severe cases where you're literally dropping down and you need to sleep. That is sleep deprivation, and you need to sleep, basically. But actually, this idea of sleep debt, for example, it's not quite right. Your body's super efficient, so you don't have to have another 4 hours because you missed 4 hours. Your brain is so smart that it will actually efficiently get you back the stages of sleep that you need the most. It will just increase the percentages of them in your sleep, and it potentially can get it back in 2 hours or less, depending on you, and everybody's different. So I feel like we make it worse by, we wake up in the morning, or we don't wake up because we didn't sleep, and then we're so upset about that actually it's the perception of what's happened to our sleep that's caused us to then have it affect our day, rather than the actual sleep itself. And the reason we know that is because we can literally give you no sleep whatsoever in a lab. We can give you some light exposure just to increase your alertness levels, and they will increase, and your melatonin will go down. So you haven't slept, but just by giving you light, we've kind of done the same things, and you still be able to function during the day. Yes, you will feel rubbish, but all these research, when we look at research about, how sleep affects us, yes, okay, it does affect us cognitively and it does affect our problem solving, but think about it realistically. How many times has it literally lost you your job? How many times has it caused you to make such a big mistake that, it's had terrible consequences? I'm betting that either that's a zero or it's very little compared to how many times you've had a poor night's sleep. And so being realistic and trying to accept is really important as well.
Touching on that, I do start to wonder too about mental illness, about anxiety, depression, about all kinds of different challenges. And on a simple level, just basic decision making when you're fatigued. And just this year, for the first time, really since I can remember in my life, I feel I've had dozens and dozens of days where I literally am unequivocally well rested. I got solid 7 hours of sleep or whatever. Sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 7. It doesn't really matter for me. I agree. It's not really about the time, but I just feel like I can honestly say I am not tired. I am, I got other challenges in my life, but I'm not tired. And I just feel less susceptible to emotional outbursts, to anxiety and depression, both of which come back to chase me at different times. And I've just started thinking about this and thinking about mental illness. Mental illness worldwide is at an all-time low, and people are not sleeping well either. I don't know the stats on sleep quality worldwide, but I'm just wondering, with your clinical work and things, do you see a correlation or a causal relationship between sleep deprivation and mental health?
Yeah, but what we need to make a distinction here is between sleep deprivation and insomnia. So most of us who have a problem with sleeping, and this might not be you, so because your your symptoms are specific, but most people have insomnia or problems that are very similar to insomnia. Now, insomnia is not the ability, like not sleeping, because if you weren't sleeping, as chronic sleep deprivation research shows us, you'd be either dead or you'd be very, very sick. But most people are not very, very sick, and they're definitely not dead, but they've still got a sleep problem. So you need to be very mindful that those people with that kind of sleep problem that are not getting really, really sick, it feels rubbish. It's super debilitating. It makes you feel really, really sad and low sometimes, and it can make you feel anxious and lonely, but it's very different from that significant sleep deprivation that we talk about in the research. And it just is really important to make that definition, because a lot of people are sitting in fear. Like they're like, oh my God, I don't know if I have this for the rest of my life, what's going to happen? What if I can't fix this? What if this gets worse? Actually, with insomnia, and you've probably got it in your own experience, it doesn't tend to get worse. And insomniacs will be able to tell you this because they're not sleepy during the day. So you described something different. But most insomniacs, whilst they're not getting the quality and the duration that they want to at the right times, they're not actually sleepy during the day. So they're not sleep deprived people. So it's really important. If you are sleep deprived, then I would give you a bed and you'd lie on it and you'd magically fall asleep. So sleep deprivation is much worse for you, but it's also very easy to treat. And it's the act of actively restricting yourself from sleep. That is very different from the people out there that can't sleep and will do anything. They are willing themselves to sleep. They will do anything to get the right sleep, but the right sleep isn't happening. They are very different to a sleep-deprived person. It's really important to make that distinction. But with mental health problems, yes, both can affect mental health, absolutely. But what we're finding is, or at least what I'm finding in clinic especially, is it is more the perception of how sleep affects us and what we're told that's frightening us into worrying, into having more anxiety and feeling very depressed. And then the other side of the coin is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the depression that came first and then you got insomnia or sleep problems? Or is it insomnia and then you got the depression, or the other way around? When you go to your doctor, for example, it's very easy, and it feels like sometimes they feel that sleep is just a symptom of another condition, and it's wrong to look at sleep that way. And that is partly why we're not resolving the issue. Because if you're saying, okay, you're anxious, all we need to do to stop your insomnia is treat the anxiety, then that person goes away and they try loads of anxiety reduction and they can't reduce it because they know their sleep is bad and they're really stressing out about it. So they're not really targeting the sleep problem. And that is why a lot of people, and a lot of people that are trying to make money out of the sleep industry right now, they're saying, just relax, do some mindfulness, do some relaxation techniques, anxiety reduction, try something, de-stress. and that will help you sleep. But again, if you talk to an insomniac, they'll say, I have tried all that and I am still not sleeping. And that is because the only way you can sleep is by building up the sleep drive. There is nothing psychological about fixing sleep, but you're absolutely right. It can cause sleep problems. But once you're there with a habitual pattern, it is actually the drive state that's actually gone a bit floppy, and we need to resolve that. But instead, people are obsessing over relaxation techniques. And then when they don't work, what's happening? They're also increasing their anxiety. So not only do they have a sleep problem, but now they've got a depression potentially or an anxiety problem. So isn't it funny how actually what's out there at the moment in the sleep economy and the media is actually, it's scaremongering and it's making things worse.
Yeah, it's so similar to the diet industry. You know, there's all this advice about counting calories and, you know, laws of thermodynamics and all this kind of stuff. And it's exactly the same with people. I spent a number of years working with chronically obese people, and they know everything. They know every diet. They know how to count everything.
Yeah, of course they do.
They know all this stuff. They're like super pros, and it's not working. And it's the same sort of thing. The underlying issue is not being addressed. That's not to say that it doesn't, you know, that there is statistically about 2 to 8% of people who that does work for, and then the 92 to 98% of people, the little tricks and stuff don't work because the underlying issue is something that, in the case of food, is often totally opaque. This is a really, really great conversation. I was expecting you to tell me that I had to lay a specific way and put my head on the pillow. And it's interesting because nobody's ever, we've had a ton of sleep experts on the show, and I often leave the interview feeling anxious and guilty about the way that I sleep, in the same way that chronic dieters feel anxious and guilty about what's in their cupboard. And it really does compound the problem. And
my God, it does.
Of course I do this stuff. You know, I have blackout curtains. I do all the sleep hygiene stuff, and for me it does make a difference, but it's a 10% difference. It's not a 90% difference.
Exactly. And absolutely. And like I say, those things, there is a place for those things. Don't get me wrong. But it's if the light is blaring in your room at night, then yes, blackout curtains are going to help you. But if you're looking at all these things and they're not really the cause of your problem, but you're just trying them anyway, it's generally just not going to deal with the habitual problem. So what I would probably say is, if you've got an acute sleep problem, by that I mean, say something stressful has happened or an illness or something, and then you've got sleep problems, which by the way is entirely normal. I get sleep problems. I'm a sleep expert. I've been doing this for 13 years. I get sleep problems. So normal, okay? But what's not normal is after a few weeks, if it becomes habitual. Now, in the first few weeks, you can probably do some of those sleep hygiene tips that we've just been speaking about, or, you know, and perhaps potentially they will help, okay? Because it's acute, right? But as soon as it becomes habitual, then you're looking at a different type of problem. So as soon as it's over a couple of months, you definitely aren't going to get any. That's how I would sort of differentiate between maybe the 10% that would get some resolve out of those things and the people that don't, is usually how long the sleep problem has been going on for.
Really, really great advice. Love the work that you're doing, and I'm excited to learn more. Stephanie, for people listening, how can they connect with you? I know you've got some online programs and things. Where's the best place for them to go?
So I've got my website, Sleepy Hair Clinic, is www.sleepyhairclinic.co.uk. But I'm always giving away lots of free advice and tips on social media. So we've got @StephSleepyHead, which is my Instagram, and Twitter is @SleepyClinic.
Until you brought it up, I didn't realize, but I have all this anxiety around my sleep hygiene, I'm really pleasantly surprised. I was expecting to get off this call and look at my bedroom and feel bad about myself again. So let go, enjoy yourself. You deserve it. Be kind to yourself. It's really important. It's a really, really interesting message. I'm excited to learn more, so definitely excited to check out your work, and I know our listeners will too. So thanks so much for what you're doing, and I hope we can stay in touch for the future. If you're a yoga teacher, a Pilates teacher, a personal trainer, or if you work one-on-one with clients, I have a 21-day private yoga business accelerator program starting soon. This is actually our third batch of students we've done this year. It's such an elegant program. I'm really excited about it. How it works is you give me 15 minutes every day, and for 21 days, I'll give you an assignment, a very simple assignment to do to move your private yoga teaching business forward. When I first started training teachers teachers back in 2006. I discouraged everyone from teaching privates because it just didn't work. There wasn't a market for it. These days, there's a huge market for it with on-demand service industries like Uber and Airbnb and all the on-demand apps. People are very comfortable hiring private yoga teachers. So it's been really interesting to see the shift where there's actually more yoga happening outside of studios than inside. And we now have graduates and trainees teaching privately in big cities, which are kind of obvious, like London, New York, San Francisco, in medium-sized cities, but also in even towns and even villages. We have people working in towns that are as small as 5,000 people, and they have a healthy private yoga practice. The cool thing about a private yoga business is you usually just need 12 to 15 clients to be full. In my studios, we need hundreds of clients per studio just to keep the lights on. With private yoga, it's much simpler. In any case, if you'd like to learn more, go to myyogabusiness.com, myyogabusiness.com. This week's nutritional tip is in response to a listener question, and the question was, Lucas, what do you think about fluoride in toothpaste and mouthwash and dental care products? What do you think about fluoride in public drinking water? This is a really contentious issue where people get the issue really confused. If you look at worldwide dental care, there's huge disparities, and in fact, there's really interesting correlations between poor dental health and poor health in general. It's not always causal, it's correlated. And so which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did the health decline and then dental care declines? It's really hard to pull the two apart. But one thing that is very clear is that fluoride topically is really phenomenal for remineralizing, for protecting teeth. It works really, really well. Where people got a little bit confused, and especially public health administrators, is they started sticking it inside of things, specifically public drinking water. Fluoride is a neurotoxin, and it's very dangerous. Now, whenever you say that, people say, well, I don't want that in anything, and that makes sense, but there's lots of neurotoxins out there. Aspartame, for example, which is artificial sweetener, NutraSweet, or any artificial sweetener that is in most diet sodas and beverages and chewing gums. Aspartame's in almost everything, also a neurotoxin. That doesn't mean that you can never eat it. It just means it's probably something you want to minimize. But topical use and ingestion really have to be separated if you want to think about this intelligently. This means that if you're using a fluoride toothpaste or a fluoride mouthwash, you need to use them really, really carefully because you don't want to swallow any of that stuff. But to throw it out completely may or may not be a mistake. For sure, check with your dentist and check with your doctor. But again, the big risk here, all the controversy is around the ingestion of fluoride, which has no proven efficacy in terms of bone and dental health or strength of your teeth. In fact, it has kind of opposite efficacy, meaning instead of making your bones and your teeth stronger, it seems like there's data to suggest that it actually makes for brittle bones, which is the opposite of what you're looking for. There's a whole bunch of other things that it does that are really negative as well, not the least of which is screws up your gut microflora. But again, it's really important to distinguish topical use from ingestion. I don't think it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think it's a big mistake to say no fluoride ever. I think it's a really smart thing to say get that stuff out of the drinking water. But in terms of dental health, especially when you're looking at living a long time and you want to keep your teeth, I think it's something really interesting to consider. So I think the answer to this question is it depends, but for sure don't eat it, meaning don't get it in your stomach. And if you're using it orally, make sure that you're using it in a really mindful way so you don't end up accidentally swallowing it. So using, really, really washing thoroughly afterwards if you're using a toothpaste or a mouthwash, and maybe going in for irregular treatment so you can really control to make sure that you're not ingesting it might be a way to go. Hope that helps. We have a listener question this week from listener Subandra. Subandra asks, since eating grains, oats, and fruits is no good, what suggestion do you have for eating healthfully? I've been eating vegetarian my whole life. I'm 25 now and will admit that I eat a lot of carbs. I exercise regularly. I've done yoga since 15, but probably not as much of the amount of carbs as I eat. What can I do to replace them? Could you give me a list of things to look out for? What are some deficiencies maybe? What supplements would you recommend? And I know it's hard with no soy, no grains, no sugar, no dairy. Can I get all that I need from zucchini and broccoli? You say whole foods, but what exactly are they? These are really great questions. So the first thing that I'll say is that the isms of the world, the raw foodism, paleoism, veganism, vegetarianism, macrobioticism, all of those things, when you layer on restriction, you layer on complexity. And you make it more challenging to eat healthfully all the time. Now, if you always control your environment, if you have a cook, if you're cooking for yourself all the time, it's pretty easy to eat all of those different ways very healthfully. But if you layer on restriction, it makes it a lot more challenging, and you need to educate yourself a lot. So is it possible to be a raw food vegan and get everything that you need? Absolutely. But you better spend a lot of time studying nutrition. You better spend a lot of time in the kitchen doing prep, because it's not nearly as accessible, easy, and affordable as it is to kind of navigate through the normal food system. Now, the normal food system, of course, is loaded with time bombs and sugar bombs and trans fat bombs. But if you know what you're doing, it takes less education to get through it. So this challenge that you're coming up with, where it seems like no soy, no grains, no sugar, no dairy, what can I eat? First of all, you cannot live off of zucchini and broccoli. They are nutritionally deficient, so the answer is no. If you're looking to do a plant-based diet, the first thing I'll say is it's really hard. The second thing I'll say is nobody cares except you. And as somebody who's been doing this now for my entire adult life, 16 years, I can tell you that really nobody cares. And so make sure that it's something that you really care about, something that's really important to you, for you, and make sure it's something that really works for you on multiple levels. So make sure that it's making you feel healthy, make sure that's making you feel balanced, makes you feel challenged and fulfilled, whatever it is that you need to get out of this adventure that you're going down. With all that said, it sounds like you're in this. So, 25 years in, sounds like you're going for this, and you're worried about overeating carbs. Probably you're right. And so most people on a plant-based diet overeat carbs. What does that mean? Well, most people that I work with are eating 300 to 500 grams of carbs per day when they're on a plant-based diet. And the truth is, even people on a standard American diet are usually eating that many carbs. And so for all of us, but especially people who are limited in terms of fat and protein sources, like plant-based people are, you need to figure out a way to throttle your carbs, usually cut them in half, so that 300 to 500 grams of carbs usually needs to come somewhere between 150 and 200 grams based on your ideal body weight. And that's a big challenge, because where do you get the rest of this nutrition? And it needs to come from fat and protein. But when you go to the grocery store, when you go to the supermarket, that broccoli, that zucchini, that's not going to give you that fat and the protein that you need. So the first thing you need to accept that this is a totally unnatural way to eat. If you go reading blogs and things like that, they'll tell you that all the Buddhist monks and that Jesus Christ and that all these people used to eat this way. This is not true. I've really studied all this stuff, and historically, it seems like humans were omnivores up until very, very recently, when weirdos like me and you started experimenting with these restrictive, highly, highly restrictive diets. So you need to keep in mind that you're in uncharted territories, and you need to get your blood work done. You need to keep and monitor things and make sure that you're on track. What to look out for. So the advice that I give in terms of supplements are pretty much the same for everyone, whether you're plant-based or not. But pretty much everyone listening should be on a vitamin D3 supplement. Vitamin D3 is not technically plant-based. It comes from lanolin in most cases. Lanolin is basically oil that comes from usually the wool industry. There are other sources, but that's usually where it comes from. The plant-based vitamin D3, for me, I took heavy doses for 6 months and it didn't work. I don't believe in these plant-based D3s. It had my serum levels, the levels in my blood were really high, but actual absorption in my body was extremely low. I don't think they work. I think you need to get vitamin D3 from animal sources. So you have to make a decision there, but my levels were chronically low for a long time. I switched to a lanolin-based D3. My levels are now above 50, which is a big accomplishment. Most of you listening are below 30. So vitamin D3, I take between 5,000 and 10,000 IUs, international units, a day. And it kind of depends on the season. So right now we're getting into winter season where I live, so I'm moving up to about 10,000 IUs, and I monitor my blood to make sure I don't eat too much. Most supplements will have way too little, like 1,000, even 1,000 IUs, even 500 IUs, which will never really make a big bump in terms of your levels. The other thing to take a look at is a B vitamin complex. Now, plant-based people tend to get more B vitamins actually than people on a standard American diet, but it's still something that almost everybody's deficient in. So I just generally recommend looking for a good B complex, or in my case, I like to break up the B vitamins and take them separately because my stomach reacts to a lot of different B vitamins. And last but not least is an omega-3. Essential fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA, are extremely rare in our modern diet, and they're essential, meaning if you don't eat them, you don't get them, big problems. Inflammation, brain fog, mood disorders, all kinds of stuff come from low omega-3s. Relatively easy to fix, and especially if you're not eating small, oily fish, you need to get some sort of source. The one that I like is algae oils. I like chia and flax seeds, which give you kind of precursors to that EPA and DHA, but they can be really helpful as well. But taking an EPA, DHA algae oil, if you're on a plant-based diet, can be a good way to go. The biggest thing, though, those are all smaller things. The big thing on a macro level, what you need to think about, is starting to eat a lot more fat. And it sounds like you're eating some dairy. So if you are eating dairy and dairy works for you, butter is going to be the least inflammatory of all the animal fats. In fact, for many people, it's even anti-inflammatory because there's very little of the milk sugars, lactose, and things like this in butter. So that can be a really great source of dietary fat. Other things to think about, coconut oil, coconut products, cacao, avocado, depending on where you are in the world, nuts and seeds, if you tolerate them well. Oils, for sure, high-quality oils, but you need to get a lot of fat. So if you're going on a plant-based diet, I would aim to transition to at least a 50% of your dietary calories coming from fat, which for most people is totally radical and feels crazy to eat like, maybe 100 grams of fat a day. For most people, will take some adjusting. You need more bile, you need more lipase enzyme in your gut. It takes, maybe 3 months, 6 months to transition over there. But that's the way that you need to go. In terms of protein, this is the one where you run into a challenge because most of the vegetarian proteins are wrapped in a whole bunch of starch. Perfect example would be something like beans. Legumes have a really great, really interesting amino acid profile. The problem is it comes with piles and piles of starch. And so in order to get to that protein, you got to eat a whole bunch of carbs, which is problematic, as you mentioned, unless you're really, really active. Like you'll see some of the vegan athletes, they can power through that stuff fine. But for people who are moderately active, maybe you're doing a yoga practice, you live an active lifestyle, but you're not training 3 to 6 hours a day, you're probably, at some point, now it sounds like you're just 25, you can probably get away with it for longer, but at some point, you'll probably hit a wall with too much carbs, and you'll start to have some metabolic effects. So you might put on a little extra belly fat, you might, your C-reactive protein levels might go up, very likely your A1C, your blood glucose levels will go up over time, and those are all indicators of declining health, so you want to take care of that right away. So my biggest suggestion is jack up the fat slowly. Try to figure out a way to get more and more protein, so things like nuts and seeds, legumes with care. Make sure you're not double and triple starching, which is where you take beans and rice, or beans and rice and bread. A burrito is kind of like a carb bomb. There's very little protein, tons and tons of starch. Not really great in the long term. And also just make sure that what you're doing works for you. Because again, you're the one who cares here. You're the one who is the recipient of both the benefits and the drawbacks. So make sure that's working for you. But you need to jack up your fat, get your protein in a moderate to low level, like around 10% of dietary calories. And then eat your carbs in a really moderate way. I know that can be really overwhelming at first. It is a challenge for sure. The biggest challenge is to your microbiome and to your digestive enzymes and to your gallbladder that needs to spit out all the bile to digest these super healthy fats, which you'll start to increase. So give yourself some time, transition slowly, and really make sure you're tracking your carbs and make sure you're tracking your protein, and then fill in the rest with fat. Hope that's helpful.
This week's iTunes review is by Soul City 70 from the US. Soul City 70 says, I was so psyched to discover this podcast. I have been a yoga teacher for 18 years and am so impressed with this podcast. I love the range of non-dogmatic, useful information on nutrition and body movement that it provides. I haven't heard anything like it. The guests that Lucas Rockwood brings on are incredibly insightful, offering unique information that is valuable to my yoga practice and overall health. What an eye-opening, expansive experience. I hope to get to one of your trainings one of these days. Keep on spreading the good vibes. Congratulations, Soul City 70. You have won the Yoga Trapeze. Email us at podcast@yogabody.com and we will ship it to you.
If you like the Yoga Talk Show, you'll definitely want to get on our mailing list. Go to yogabody.com/sign me up. This is my private email list where once a week at the very most, I'll send you a quick update. This is where I send some of my insider information, some of the stuff that's not really for public consumption, but specifically for Yoga Talk Show listeners, early announcements of new courses and new products, and just for signing up, we give away a free prize. Usually we have some kind of physical gift or MP3 download, some kind of pose chart. We change it up every month, but to join the top secret list, please go to yogabody.com/sign me up. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.